Yo guys, JJ here, and today we're going to be making a Don Toliver tutorial. I'll be walking you guys through a beat that I made for Don Toliver. It's a nice spacious ambient beat, got some classic Don Toliver instrument, a nice little bit of splash here and there from my own pizzazz. Let's get straight into this joint. Firstly, as you guys can see, we got ourselves a Omnisphere preset called classic nylon guitar, you know, standard guitar. I laid out this pattern. First of all, I got the root notes, copy and pasted it up an octave. Then when I laid these chords, I just took the chords, see what sounded good, and took it up an octave, and that's how I got the basic chords for these guitars. And as well as that, I just clicked Alt-R to randomize the velocity. And with all that being said, this is what the main melody sounds like. As you guys can tell, it's quite spacious, quite ambient. It's a very reverb heavy kind of thing. For effects, we got ourselves a little EQ, cutting out a lot of the lows and a few of the highs. Then I whacked on some RC20, just took off the noise and just messed with the wobble a bit. Next up, I just threw on the basic flangus, and then I added some reverb because it makes stuff always sound much more ambient, especially for that Don Toliver stuff. And then lastly, I just added a bit of stereo separation, 22%, just to make it a bit wider in the headphones. Now, next up in the melody, I grabbed a pad from Serum, and it's called Circling Orc. And as you guys can see, I literally just copy and pasted the notes from the guitar melody. However, at the end of every 2 and 4, I just cut off a few of the last remaining parts so it doesn't fill up too much room, it gives us space for other stuff to breathe. This is what the pad sounds like. As you guys can hear, it's quite basic, but it just helps fill up a bit more room, makes it nice and a bit more full. Then, first thing I did was add another EQ, quite similar to the one for the guitar. I added a delay because it just adds a bit more of ear candy. It fills it up a tiny bit more than you'd actually expect it to, but it's a great way to fill up your melody. And then, you know, a bit of reverb because reverb's the source to everything in life. Then I stereo separated at 72%, made it much more wider in the mix, just so, as I said before, it gives room for everything to do its part without sounding really clustered. Now, next up, within the whole melody, I got a preset which is called the 80s bass. You'll know what it sounds like when you hear it because you can't really have a Don Toliver beat without like this kind of bass. And as you guys can see, I just followed the root notes whilst I made the pattern and just gave it some space so it had a bit more bounce. The melody just repeats every 4 bars. This is what my bass sounds like. If you don't have this bass in your beat and you're making a Don Toliver beat, then what are you doing? Now, next up within the beat, we got ourselves a flute, the Lotus flute. I love using it. You know I like using it. A lot of producers use it. It's a very good flute preset, so why don't you use it? I don't know, you tell me. So for the flute, I just laid down a nice basic counter melody, gave it a bit of space in between each note, just so it fills out a bit more space. Sounds quite good with everything together. I played with the velocities a bit, as you guys can see, just to give it a slight human touch. This is what the melody sounds like. As you can see, quite repetitive, quite ambient, and that's how Don Toliver usually has his beats made for him. For effects, I laid down the basic EQ, cutting off a few lows and a few highs. Then I whacked some heavy reverb on this flute because it just makes it sound so much nicer. And then I just stereo separated it a tiny bit, 31%, just so again, it's all nicely layered within the mix. Now, the last component to the melody, I grabbed the preset from Expand 2 called Part of Gold. It's part of the Polysynths bank. And when you guys look at this, you might be thinking, whoa, this is a bit crazy, man. I don't know what's going on. And I'll be like, yo, hold your horses. Like those horses, hold on to them because it's not that bad. I pretty much just grabbed the main melody like from the pad and the guitar. I laid it out here. I manually arpeggiated it. So I just followed this arpeggiated pattern that I made where it goes all the way up. So it goes from D to G to C, which is how I like in the first chord. And then it just cascades back down and cascades up. So it's kind of like an up and down pattern. And then I did this in with the rest of the chords. As you guys can see, just copy and pasted it and then played with the velocities a bit. So this is what the arp sounds like. I think that sounds very nice. It's a nice synth layer to it all. It just gives it a bit more ear candy, another layer to the whole thing. And then for effects, I whacked on an EQ, cutting off a lot of the highs and the lows. just to filter those bad frequencies out. Whacked on a Fury chorus, and then of course a very heavy reverb, but the decay was quite low, just so it could stand again. It's a bit further back in the mix, so it just doesn't overcrowd everything. And I had the stereo separation to 84% because I wanted really far back in the mix. Now, with all that being said, I did have a lot of components in the melody, so I didn't want to play it all together because I thought it would just sound a bit too crowded. So as you can see, I spaced it out within the beat, and I think it sounds quite good. This is what the melody sounds like all together. As you guys can hear, it sounds pretty nice, kind of spacious, ambient, synth-esque, flutes in the back, instruments flying everywhere. If you ever have too much going on in your melody, try and separate it. It does make a big difference because that beat is always varying up, and that's what we like to see. Next up, we're going to go onto the drums, and first things first, the snare pattern. As you guys can see, I laid down quite a very basic pattern, well, like any other pattern, and then added a few rolls at the end just to indicate the next like 8 bar coming up. And this came in and out throughout the beat. Sometimes I took it out, sometimes I kept it in. This is what the whole pattern sounds like. Bada bing, bada boom, and that's your clap pattern. Next up, we got a very basic hi-hat pattern because the melody's already doing so much. We just gotta keep it quite simple with the hi-hats, and it's a 2-step pattern. So this is what the hi-hat pattern sounds like. Okay, let's be real. No one wants to hear a whole 2-step pattern for the whole 8 bars, so let's just move to the next drums. Now, we're on to our kick pattern, and as you can see, I kept it quite basic. It kind of follows the bass that we had before, and of course, you want to have your velocities going through the roof. So how to do that? Control A to highlight everything, and then just use your scroller wheel to ramp it all the way up. Now, this is what my kick pattern sounds like. My bing bang boom. Now last but not least, we got ourselves the airway pattern, and of course, you know, it's the spins because it's a great airway. Remember, of course, you want to max those velocities out. You know, hold Control A, mess with the scroll wheel and max it to the top. As you guys can see, I pretty much did follow the kick pattern going out throughout the whole thing. However, at the end of the A bar, I just threw this one an octave higher, and this is what my airway sounds like. Hey, and quick for effect, on the airway, I added this really weird fruity wave shaper here. I put this one in manually myself. It just gave it a bit more texture. I kind of like the sound it gave off, so I kept it in. And with all that being said, this is what the drum pattern sounds like. Hey, those drums are punching hard. You see what I'm saying? Like, you got a basic drum pattern here, but if your drums are hitting and knocking different, then it's going to just elevate the whole beat. And now, guys, you've obviously made it to the end of the video. This has been a Don Toliver tutorial. Obviously, you know, down there, for a like, comment, subscribe, share, you know, show some love to the people. That's how we like it. That's how we do it. And of course, have a great weekend and take it easy.